So I want to talk to you about something that comes up way more than you think it should. I'm talking about with patients in clinic. I'm talking about with conversations that I have with people. I'm talking about when I'm working with people like you who reach out, and I hear this all the time, whether it's through email or messages or whatever it may be. And I'm pretty confident once I tell you what this is here in a second, that you're going to immediately know whether this is you or not. But I do want you to listen for a second. If it's not resonating with you, you can click out. It's totally okay. I don't want to waste your time. And quick side note, if you're a regular here, hey, look, progress. This has been a boring blank room for the last 2 videos with my recent move. But hey, we are getting places. Before you know it, there'll actually be things on that bookshelf. But I can promise you the content in this video is going to be better than the background that you're looking at. So the thing that keeps coming up that I just feel like I have to address is people keep telling me they can't read anymore. And before you click out thinking that is the stupidest thing you ever heard in your life, they don't usually say it like, I can't read anymore. They say it in many different ways. Essentially, people are telling me they've got a stack of books that they bought and never opened. Or they start one and around, 15, 20 pages in, or maybe they get to chapter 2, they just stop reading it. Or they sit down at night with this book they've really been meaning to read, and they don't even make it 10 minutes before they pick up their phone, and they don't even really remember picking the book up. This is starting to resonate with you. But here's what kills me about this. The more I looked into this and reflected on this, it's not about the book. They're not talking about the book at all. They're talking about themselves. I think the book is the scapegoat here because this is pervasive into so many other aspects of your life. There's also this significant embarrassment with it because if you're of an age that didn't 100% grow up with phones, and some of you are, some of you aren't, that's fine, but you used to be able to do this, and people think there's something wrong with them. But seriously, if this is starting to resonate with you now, keep that feeling that you're feeling. We're going to circle back to this. Let me also be clear about why this matters to me. I've talked many times before, and I've written about it in my book, right? That's why I did it, about how I struggled for a very, very long stretch of my life. And a big part of that was not being able to hold on to a thought. You will not find good success in this world if you can't hold on and manipulate thoughts. And this is what this is about. So this isn't just like an abstract topic for me. I've been on the other side of this, and I know how it feels to think that your brain is stuck in the crappy way that it's performing now. I've made a few videos about what's pulling your attention apart every single day. The phone, the scrolling, the switching, all of it. Those were primarily about the damage. This one is in a little bit of a different direction. This is about putting things back. Now, the other videos certainly address that as well too. I always give actionable advice in them. I recommend you check them out. But this will be a little bit less about stripping things away and more about rebuilding a system. The research on why this works is honestly some of the more interesting things that I've read, and I've been following it for many years now. I've really enjoyed it. So let's get into it. So the first thing that I want to address in general is willpower. The reason I say this is because I don't think that this is a discipline problem for most people. I've seen this enough, and I feel relatively confident saying that. There is a network in your brain that handles sustained attention. A few, actually. Researchers call it the frontoparietal control network, and its whole job is to hold one thing steady while filtering out everything else that is pulling your attention away. And like pretty much every system in your body, it shapes itself around whatever you keep asking it to do. That's important here. That's neuroplasticity. Your brain is always adapting to the demands you put on it, and it doesn't particularly care whether those demands are good for you. Or better said, it doesn't particularly care whether those demands are good for you long term. So it's worth asking and reflecting what you've been asking your brain to do. And this is where the research gets a little bit uncomfortable for most people. There's a study that came out of Stanford, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. It looked at heavy media multitaskers. So people constantly running like multiple things in their head at once. People are like, I'm such a good multitasker. No, you're not. And what they found was that those people constantly performed worse at filtering out irrelevant information and worse at switching cleanly between tasks, which is backwards from what you would expect or maybe what you think of yourself. You'd think that practicing switching would make you better at switching. It doesn't. It just makes you more distracted. I will shout this from the rooftops. I have been in many of my videos for over a year now. Here's the way I think about this. Say that you used to be a runner. Maybe you did, maybe you don't, but the analogy will work fine. Then you stopped for a couple of years. One day, you decided you're going to go out and run 3 miles. You're obviously not going to make that very well. You're going to be walking within a half mile. You felt that feeling, your lungs are like literally on fire and you're wondering like, what happened to your prime? How are you doing this now? You're terrible now. But you wouldn't stand there in the middle of the road and decide that you are a lazy person. You'd know you were out of shape. Those are two completely different things, and they are two completely different directions as to where you need to go. Logically, you will make the correct deduction there most times. And I think with this analogy, with how people's brains are right now, people are standing out in the middle of the road calling themselves lazy. I have sat across from plenty of patients over the years who came in genuinely concerned they have got something wrong with them cognitively. These are smart people. These are doing well. And they came in appropriately. You need to get evaluated, okay? But when we actually walked through everything and walked through what a normal day looked like for them, nothing was wrong at all. They just spent probably a decade training their brain the wrong way. Not intentionally, they just went with how society pulls you. This is a much better problem to have because you can fix it. So if this is not a major flaw, but this is a conditioning problem, then the question becomes, how do we train it? This is where I think a lot of the advice falls short out there. Again, this is like the first 3 chapters literally in here because it took me years to synthesize this information and gather it from places and get it to you in an appropriate way. But that's because almost everything people recommend for attention is only subtraction. And that is very important, like deleting the apps. And I talk about this, right? Putting the phone in a drawer, dopamine detoxes, whatever this means this month, right? It changes all the time. Meditate, pray. These are remarkably helpful things, but we've got to add the loading of the good things. I'm telling you, I am so supportive of that. I do them all. I use an app blocker. That's a hard device called the Brick device. It's amazing. It will really get you off of your distracting apps, but that is taking the load off, which has to happen first. And I've made tons of videos about that, but we've got to talk about what to add to retrain your brain to be able to handle this. Think about it in an analogy like lifting. At some point, you've got to put the weight back on. And that's what reading does that the other stuff doesn't. Because when you have a book, you are in charge of making the move. And I'm going to explain that. Think about how much of what you take on during the day moves against your own pacing. Videos like this one are moving whether you're paying attention or not. You can walk away. You're not controlling this video. I mean, you can pause it, right? But the speed, etc. And I'm going to keep talking at my speed. That is not necessarily in your control. I know there's a dial for it, but a podcast also moves. An audiobook moves, even though we consider that reading in many cases. Because someone, not you, decided how fast and how paced this is going to be. But a page, that just sits there. It does nothing until you actually turn the page. Every sentence you are in control of. And when your attention wanders off, that page doesn't keep going without you. And that's what I like about it. This is uncomfortable. And this can be the whole point sometimes because this is a resistance that you need to address. There's also real evidence behind doing this physical work. There was a study out of Emory published in a journal called Brain Connectivity where they had people read a novel over about 3 weeks and they scanned their brains throughout the whole thing. What they found was increased connectivity in the language areas of the brain and in the regions tied to how we simulate physical sensations. So when you read about someone running, parts of your brain that handle running light up. But here's the part that I think is actually really cool about this. Those changes were still measurable for several days after people finished the book. So it wasn't just activity while reading, something was carrying over. There's also a study in Neurology, which is another large journal, that followed people over years and looked at who holds onto their cognitive function as they age. People who stayed mentally engaged across their life, and reading is one of the big ones in the categories, showed measurably slower cognitive decline than people who didn't. So what I love about this is it means that this is not only about getting through a chapter and chalking another book off your list, this is about what your brain looks like in 30 years. And then there's also another researcher named Marianne Wolf. If any of this interests you, I'd go and look her up. She studies the reading brain. And her point, which I find really compelling, is that deep reading isn't something we are born able to do. There's no reading circuit in the genome that we have found, at least. Every single one of us builds it from scratch out of the parts that we already had, and it can take some time. And her concern, which I also share, is that anything that you can build that way can fall apart, I guess, if you stop using it, much like the running analogy. I actually find that encouraging. Because if the thing that got weaker is something you already built once, then you know it can be rebuilt. So that's the why. The next part, and I will go quickly because I respect your time, is the part where we actually do something about this. So here's the whole thing, and I'm going to make this sound too simple because that's what I do here. We make health simple. 20 minutes, a physical book, phone in a different room, same time every day. If you need to, 10 minutes, perfectly fine. Let me go through each piece quickly because all of them are doing something a little bit different. 20 minutes is long enough to actually load the system, like lifting, and short enough to where you'll still actually do it on a moderately bad night. I wouldn't start there though. I would do 10 minutes for the first week or two. Then you can work up to 20 minutes the second week or the third week or whatever you need. And if you want to go to 30 after that, go to 30. Find a good book. I don't care. If you were running, you would be ramping up the mileage at this point. So it is time to ramp up the mileage to whatever you find the most productive for you. And just to be clear, because I'm not someone who just wants you to make your whole life a system, you only really need to kind of like time this for the first little bit. Eventually, you can just read to your pleasure, okay? The physical book part matters more than people think it does. But I'll come back to that. Put your phone in another room. I will say it again, put your phone in another room. And I'm being specific because people get really creative about this one. I don't want it face down on the table. I don't want it in your pocket. I don't want it under the comforter when you're reading. Another room. And I'm not trying to be dramatic here. There is research behind this, okay? It is out of the University of Texas, published in the Journal of the Association of Consumer Research, showing that just having your phone visible reduces your available cognitive capacity, even when it's off, even when you're not thinking about it, because your brain is constantly looking for the next signal. It's constantly scanning for it. There's actually a lot more data on this as well that I talk about in other videos, but not here because I'm a little behind on where I want to be with this video, so I'm trying to pick up the pace. So just take it out of the equation and then do the same thing every day. I underestimated that for a long time because as long as it's a decision, you are going to negotiate that decision and you will lose most of those negotiations. So when this just happens at 9 o'clock when you're tucking yourself in, you don't have a choice and you don't have anything to decide because decision fatigue is real at that time. And here is the biggest one, the one that the productivity gurus and people who have millions of followers for building a new system every single week, and I don't know why, the one that no one will tell you, read something that you actually want to read. You do not need to read the newest productivity book. You do not need to read my book, even though it's really good. I don't care what you read. Read something you enjoy. I cannot stress this enough. Yes, take advice from people. If they tell you it's a great book, read it. But stop looking at 50 top productivity books that I read this year and then buying all those, putting them on your shelf and trying to suffer through those. Yes, you might find great things out of it. I enjoy reading productivity books sometimes, but I'm also loving reading The Odyssey right now. And I actually was reading it before the movie was announced because I'm trendy like that. It's an incredible book. I read Stoicism in my free time. I just enjoy it. You may not. People will say that reading fiction doesn't count, but there was actually a study showing that reading fiction engages the same networks that you use to understand what's going on inside other people. Perhaps that's empathy, not sure. So don't feel bad about reading it. The best way I can summarize this is you're not trying to prove anything to anybody. Somewhere around the second week of this, a very small shift will happen. You will get to the bottom of a page, maybe the bottom of 10 pages, and realize you were there the whole time. You were engaged. You didn't leave. And that's important. It's a very strange feeling because I bet you forgot what that was like. Somewhere around a month or two into this, something changes outside of reading, which is the part that I feel like most people don't talk about, but that's why I'm mentioning it because I'm trying to set you up for the rest of your life, not just reading this book in this moment. You will be in the middle of a conversation or a lecture or a YouTube video and realize that you're actually still in it. A meeting that normally would have been making you lose your mind and constantly like reflexively itching for your phone, you don't do that. You were there the whole time. It doesn't wreck you the way that it used to. And that is the whole point. The reading is the gym, and going to the gym will translate into every other aspect of your life. But as I'm closing this out, I want to leave you with a little bit of advice because I've seen 3 main ways that people do this and get almost nothing from it. So let me save you the effort. The first one is doing it on a screen. And there's a lot more data on this now. There's actually a meta-analysis in the Educational Research Review that pulled together dozens of studies comparing comprehension on paper versus on a device. The paper keeps coming out ahead every single time almost. And the interesting part is the gap has gotten wider over the years, not smaller. which is the opposite of what you'd expect when people are getting used to screens. Whatever the reason, it keeps showing up, so use paper. The second one is turning it into consumption, highlighting every other line, speed reading, tracking how many books you got through this year or month or week. Those are the worst. Taking notes on all of it so you feel accomplished, like you did something. I get it, but you are collecting. And this collecting concept is the same thing we are trying to fix. You are allowed to read something that you get nothing out of, that you don't have to show anyone. The third one is thinking that audiobooks cover this whole thing. I'm not taking your audiobooks from you. Do not yell at me. But it's like what I talked about earlier. Someone else is making the pace, which means the exact thing that you're trying to train does not get trained. You can keep using them, just don't count it as this time. So that's it. 10 minutes, read a book, phone in another room, same time every night. Start low, okay? Read something you actually want. The first week might be rough. Go back one paragraph at a time instead of starting over if you need to, and then give it long enough to actually show up in your life. Actually try it. Just give me 7 days. That's all I'm asking right now. 10 minutes for 7 nights. You can do this. I will be so proud of you. Please come back here and comment if you think you can do that. If this video resonated with you, seriously, the video that I would recommend to go watch next is the one on what constant stimulation has been doing to your brain. That one is the damage, and this one is the repair, okay? Honestly, they make a lot more sense together. I will put it on the end screen for you, so just wait a second, it's going to show up. And if you want everything that I did to rebuild my own mind, body, my whole life, the whole thing, that is in my book, okay? From Dole to Doctor. This is much more than I can put in a YouTube video. It took me 3 years to get this right because I wanted to make sure it was actually worth your time. It's in every format. I will link in the description for you. I will also link a free blueprint in the description for you as well if you prefer that. I'm trying to meet people with where they're at. For all the people who are going to ask, I put every study that I reference in the description so you can go read them yourself. If you found value here, please like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification button so you don't miss the next video. I post another amazing life-changing video like this once a week, if not more. And again, if you found value, please share this with a loved one. It's completely free and it's the least that you can do to help them. And as always, I'm Dr. Matt Jones. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.